video is sponsored by MPB. Well, hello everybody, and you might be familiar with comments if you spend a lot of time on YouTube where people moan about YouTubers holding microphones, but I'm going to do it today because it's quite loud here. Welcome to what you'll recognise as Southeast Asia if you spent time here before. It's 7:30 a.m. and busy. This is Vietnam, by the way, somewhat randomly, I imagine, if you don't follow me on Instagram. But today, I'm going to do some talking about this camera, this Q3 43, which I said I wouldn't do for a while because I wanted to get to know it first before I gave my opinion on it. That's still going to be the case. This is very much a first impressions video, but I've had so many questions about it, I thought I would voice those first impressions. It's a Saturday morning. People haven't even got work. I love this place. It's all just a bit different to me. There's a group of women over there doing Tai Chi to the tune of Feliz Navidad. Anyway, I've made some notes and I don't intend to go on too much because this camera is not as interesting as Vietnam. And I'm definitely not as interesting as Vietnam, so we'll get back to the photos before long. But my thoughts on this camera basically can be summarised, well. A couple of months ago I made a video with the normal Q3, the 28mm version. And I borrowed that camera, thanks to MPB, the sponsor of this video, for loaning that to me. I took it to the Faroe Islands, and my thoughts were that there's plenty I like about that camera, but I didn't really understand the footprint of the camera. That lens, and indeed this lens, they're not exactly massive, but they're also not small, certainly not small enough to fit in most pockets. And so if you've got a lens this big that's not going to fit in a pocket attached to a camera, I mean, what's the point in the camera being this small? You might as well make the camera, in my opinion, a bit more ergonomic. Give it a grip, give it a joystick, but they haven't. And that, I remember being my main gripe with the normal Leica Q3. But then this one, the 43mm version, got announced. And as you know, I love focal lengths such as 43, and curiosity got the better of me. So I bought one, which sounds incredibly blasé, doesn't it? But the thing about YouTube is, it's often profitable to buy cameras. It's a really weird existence having a YouTube channel, and perhaps we can get into the business of YouTube in another video. But basically, this camera probably won't end up costing me much money, might even make me money. Now, a few things to talk about. Let's start with the lens. The lens, just like the 28mm version, is an absolute triumph, I think, and I love it. I truly love it. I wish I could take this lens and attach it to my other cameras. I think it's fantastic. And of course, what it has going for it over the 28mm version, nearly a big crash then between three scooters. Over the 28mm version, I obviously prefer this because, as I say, I love 40mm, 50mm. I've talked about that way too much on the channel. But the lens, even if it is a little bit big for this particular body that it's glued to, I love it. I think it's absolutely amazing. What's next? The files, I also love the files. I mean, the thing is, I don't know of a camera that has 60 megapixels and a full frame sensor that doesn't produce lovely looking files. These very much look like Leica files. They're very contrasty, but I mean, they're just as nice, or I like them just as much, I should say, as the Sony files or any other camera really that I use. So the files are beautiful. I don't think they're anything to write home about, but maybe that's just me. The body and the ergonomics, I've already touched on this. I'm not a fan of the body, really. I mean, the grey leatherette, I wish it was green, but aside from that, just aesthetics, I think this camera is missing some tricks as far as ergonomics goes. I've tried some grips, didn't like them because the shutter is right at the top, so you find yourself reaching with your index finger, or I certainly did. I did, and I'm ashamed to say this to be honest, I did buy a thumb support from Leica. As soon as I opened the box, I regretted it. £205. Now the thumb support helps, but it does mean that your thumb has to go right the way around it to get to the exposure dial. Not the biggest deal in the world, but again, it just doesn't feel particularly thought through. Anyway, that's the ergonomics. Autofocus. I think if you also have a new Sony, a new Canon, or basically any new camera from the major brands that's sort of up there, this will feel like a step behind, or 2 steps behind, maybe even 3 steps behind. My Sony, if I set it to hit eye autofocus, it will not miss. This gets very confused. I mean, it tracks and can spot lots of different faces and people, bodies, that kind of thing, if you set it to do so, but it doesn't really know which one to go for, and when you select one, it hovers and it's not massively confident. And maybe that sounds a bit harsh. I mean, I think it's fine in many cases. But if you're sat around a table with your friends and one of them's got a Sony, one of them's got a Canon, one of them's got a Nikon, and they're all raving about the abilities of their autofocus, you're going to be quite quiet with one of these, I think. Yeah. Aside from autofocus, I would say the camera is generally quite slow, really. It freezes a little bit if you're doing lots of burst shooting or if you're switching between stills and video a lot, for instance. The touchscreen is okay, but it's not the fastest I've ever used. And all of that means that I think this camera is better suited to shooting manual focus. Now, in some ways, that kind of makes sense. I mean, if you look at how much of the camera, or the lens certainly, is dedicated to the experience of manual focus, it's a very nice experience using manual focus with this lens. And I suppose it's a nice to have autofocus, perhaps just as a backup if you don't want to be using manual focus all the time. But I have found that my go-to with this camera is to use it as a manual focus camera with the backup of autofocus that's not terrible, but also not great. Anyway, let's look at some more photos, shall we? Yesterday morning, we went to a rice paper village where they make rice paper. Basically, they get these giant bits of bamboo and stick them through the machines, or some of them do it manually. And do you know what? I'll just show you. I've been very lucky in my life to visit lots of very happy feeling communities, but this one might take the gold medal. There is a wedding on, so perhaps that's why people are so smiley, but hello. It's a very pleasant feeling place. It was an amazing village, that. Really, really incredible, and the light was just phenomenal. And to tell you the truth, the more time I spend in places like that, little villages, communities, whether it's in the Arctic or here in the tropics, I just start thinking to myself, why on earth do I do anything different? Why do I shoot anything different? It's my favorite thing in the world to walk around communities like that, speak to people where possible, and just enjoy being in somewhere completely different than where I'm from. Was my takeaway from yesterday morning. It was amazing. Anyway, my conclusions about this camera, or my first impression conclusions about this camera at least. I think it's quite good fun, but that it's designed for play much more so than work. And nothing demonstrates that any better than the fact that it's only got one card slot. And one card slot no redundancy, no internal storage in a £6 camera from a brand that does plenty of internal storage, that leaves a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, to be honest. It makes me think that this is more of a, I'm not going to use the word toy, but it's more for fun than it is for work. One card slot, not the best autofocus, yeah. And in many ways, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, really. I mean, sports cars are not designed to be practical, are they? They're designed for fun, and they're also very expensive. It's a little bit like shoes, I think. I mean, these shoes I stick on in the morning. You might be able to see they're an absolute mess. But I put them on in the morning, and I don't think about them again until I take them off at night. Like, they just do their job. They work how they're supposed to. And that basically is my Sony that I'm filming on now. That's exactly what my Sony does. This is more like a really stylish pair of dress shoes. Exposure's gone a bit much. Like shoes that you put on and you look at through the course of the day because you're like, whoa, they're nice. But also, they give you blisters. And the question is, are those dress shoes worth the blisters? And is this camera worth the blisters? Not great ergonomics, the not great autofocus, the one card slot, the £6 it costs to buy one. Is all that faff worth it for the fun of the camera? And that, I suppose, is what I'll be finding out for my general conclusion over the course of the next year or so. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully it's been interesting. I will be doing another video from here in Vietnam. I don't know when it'll be coming out though, because I've not had time to look at any of the photos or the footage. That's a lie. I've not looked at the footage. The photos, some of them, I really, really like. So I'd love to show you those at some point. Big thank you to Roman as well for helping with some of the B-roll of this video, and a huge thank you to MPB for sponsoring this video. As I said, I borrowed the Q3, the normal Q3 from MPB in the summer to test it out, and I also sold lots and lots of my equipment over the past couple of months, which made me think that I could justify buying this. And I find that MPB is the first place that I turn to when I'm either looking to sell or to buy my camera gear. If you're buying, you get a 6-month warranty, and every piece of gear is checked thoroughly before it's put on the website. And if you're selling, then it's just the easiest process in the world. Basically, you get a quote online. If you're happy with that quote, you get a courier sent to your house to collect your gear. Then when MPB receive it, they'll assess the gear, confirm your quote, and you'll be paid very, very quickly. It takes away all the faff of insurance, couriers, disputes, questions, all the nonsense that you have to go through when you're selling gear. MPB takes care of everything, and I think it's a fantastic service. So check them out in the links in the description if you're interested in buying or selling camera gear. Oh, right. Posture was terrible then, I think. Not what you want before 16 hours on a plane, but there we go. Let's go and watch some more Tai Chi.